Final votes in this historic election are being cast today. More than 82 million voters cast their ballots early. Former President Trump spoke to supporters at his final campaign rally in Battleground, Michigan, while Vice President Harris wrapped her campaign with a star-studded rally in Pennsylvania. We'll be watching the results roll in tonight, and so will the candidates, of course. Harris will be at her alma mater of Howard University in Washington, while Trump is set to watch at the Palm Beach Convention Center in his home state of Florida. ABC's Alex Presha joins me now from the White House, along with ABC's Jay O'Brien in West Palm Beach for more. So, Jay, Trump is planning to watch the results in West Palm Beach. Who's joining him, and why did he pick this location?
Well, he's going to watch the results roll in from his Mar-a-Lago club, and then he has a watch party where he has the option to speak at the convention center here in West Palm Beach behind me. Expect the Trump family to be there. Expect that coterie of key Trump advisors to be there. We've even seen some reporting from Punchbowl that House congressional leaders are preparing to quickly go from their watch parties in their various home states here to West Palm Beach if it becomes clear tonight that Donald Trump is favored to win. Another thing to watch for, though, as these results roll in, is that Donald Trump has gotten repeated overtures and repeated advice from his advisors like Steve Bannon, not necessarily his core campaign team, but those outside further right figures, Steve Bannon chief among them, to come out and declare victory tonight regardless of what the results are. Steve Bannon said when he got out of federal prison on his first podcast, fresh out of federal prison, that he thought Donald Trump should have come out sooner on election night in 2020. 11 o'clock is what Steve Bannon said, before most of the results were even counted or tabulated, and declared victory. And he recommended that Donald Trump do something similar this year. So that's the advice that Donald Trump has been getting from fringe figures in his orbit. So keep that in mind as those results roll in tonight. And Donald Trump certainly has the option, if he wants to speak here at that watch party at the convention center this evening.
Alex, the Harris campaign chair spoke on another network this morning, saying the team is, quote, feeling really good about what we're seeing, but also said, I've never seen margins this close. What are you hearing from the Harris campaign?
Yeah, so Jen O'Malley Dillon really on the cable saying that, look, you know, they're confident about today. They feel good about the work that they put in this election cycle. But the reality is, and we've seen this reflected in the polls are incredibly close. And I think that's also probably reflected in some of their internal polling data. And so, you know, whenever you hear someone like her say that, you know, frankly, she's never seen an election cycle this close, it really kind of echoes what we already know. But I think one of the things that you talk to folks that work on campaigns, the easiest day for them, it's nerve-wracking, but the easiest day for them is actual election day. It's, you know, there is no more campaigning. You have your candidate, which usually they go and they vote in person. Maybe there's a briefing after that, but after that, it's about watching his results, tune in, and then kind of deciding kind of where to, watching the results pour in, excuse me, and then deciding where to kind of go from there. But listen, this is a day of observation for them.
Jay, in terms of their paths to victory, are there certain battlegrounds that Trump or Harris have to win, where if they don't win that one state, it's likely over for them?
For Kamala Harris, it's really what we call the blue wall: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. She needs to keep the blue wall together, really, or her path to 270 electoral votes, that key threshold that she needs to hit. They get much slimmer in some instances. Depending upon the map you're looking at, they evaporate. We've seen Donald Trump and his allies feel confident about what we call the Sun Belt, you know, Arizona, Nevada, Georgia. They feel confident about their polling there. The Harris campaign does too, because as Alex said, every single swing state polls show this razor thin. But for Donald Trump, if he holds on to that Sun Belt and then he picks up one of those blue wall states, it completely changes the calculus. One of the outliers here is North Carolina. This is the only battleground state that Donald Trump won in 2020 that he now has to defend here in 2024. We've seen North Carolina very much thrust into play in this cycle in a way that it somewhat wasn't in 2020. Trump beat Joe Biden by upwards of, if I recall correctly, 30,000 votes or so in North Carolina in 2020. I actually think it was a much bigger margin direction than that. Point being is, now that this race is thinner in North Carolina, the Harris campaign believes if they can make Trump just spend time and resources in that state as he has over the last few days, that's good for them. But if they can make a play for it tonight on election night, that certainly adds another quiver in their column and something that they're able to kind of pull out ahead with. But if you talk to Democrats, their biggest concern, and also sometimes the places where they feel the most optimistic, are those three blue wall states. They need Kamala Harris to hold on to them. They feel good about Michigan. They feel good about Wisconsin. They feel okay about Pennsylvania. It's razor thin in that state. That's where they're focusing a lot of their attention on, and frankly, a lot of their anxieties on at this hour.
And Alex, Harris went on an Atlanta-based radio show this morning. Georgia played a big role in the 2020 election. Biden was the first Democrat to win that state since 1992. How critical is Georgia this time around, and what does it tell you that Harris decided to do this interview today?
Well, as a Georgian, I'm going to say that Georgia's always critical. No, I'm kidding. But no, it is very critical. And certainly they're hoping to repeat what Biden did in 2020. I think that, as Jay was pointing out, North Carolina being in play, if Harris has a victory in North Carolina, and I won't call it a surprise victory, but if she has a victory there, then I think it does change the electoral math a little bit. And maybe there is a path forward where that doesn't include Georgia. But still, if she gets Georgia, it is significantly easier for her. And we know what's really going to turn that state for her. It's going to be the metro Atlanta area, and then small pockets towards the Alabama border, where Columbus, and then maybe out on the eastern side near Savannah. And so whenever you see her appear on this radio show, V103, which is a flagship radio station in the metro Atlanta area, she's interviewed by legendary DJ Big Tigger. This is an opportunity for her to have one last appeal in that area to really kind of drive out this excitement that, she's really hoping will be the boon for her coming into Election Day.
All right, ABC's Alex Presha, Jay O'Brien, thank you both. And North Carolina and its 16 electoral college votes is one of a handful of states that could be the deciding factor in this election. Michigan and Pennsylvania, with their combined 34 electoral votes, also critical states to watch tonight. So let's go to host and producer of the 538 Politics podcast, Galen Druke, for a little bit more on these pathways to victory. Galen, thanks as always for being on. Walk me through this path for Harris and Trump and the different options in front of them to make it to the White House.
Yeah, so the absolute sort of worst that Harris could do and still win this election is lose the Sun Belt, lose all across the South, Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, North Carolina, but still carry the Rust Belt, or the so-called blue wall, which is Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, which gets her to a 269-269 tie, but then that one extra electoral vote from Nebraska's 2nd district would put her at 270. So that is sort of the worst that Harris could do and still win. For Trump, his task is likely to win those southern battleground states that I just mentioned, but then just pull off one of those blue wall states. Right now, it looks like the closest is Pennsylvania, but I should say that over the past 2 election cycles, we've seen significant polling error in those upper battleground states. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. We saw it somewhere in the range of 8 or 9 point polling error in Wisconsin in 2020. So if the polls are off again and Trump is able to sort of sweep the Sun Belt and then pull off a state like Wisconsin or Pennsylvania, technically, if he were also able to get that 2nd congressional district in Nebraska, he could also get to 270, but I'll say that that looks far less likely. That's a really suburban, sort of highly educated area that used to vote Republican, but has quickly shifted towards Democrats.
This election could also shift the balance of power in Congress, Galen. So what races should we be watching there?
Absolutely. So the House is on a knife's edge. Most of the forecasts suggest it's something like a 50-50 proposition, and it's likely that whoever wins the presidency may also win the House because fewer and fewer voters split their tickets. So in 2020, there were only 16 House districts that voted for one party for president and the other party for House. And Democrats just need to flip 4 seats in order to get there. The battleground for the House is something of a revenge of the coasts. There are a lot of competitive districts in states like New York and California. And to that point, I should say that if this race is close in the House, we may not know who wins that chamber for longer than the presidency, because California counts its ballots particularly slowly. So if it does come down to California, it could be a long slog. And then, of course, in the Senate, West Virginia is extremely likely to flip to Republicans. If Trump wins, that means that they will have control of the chamber with just that one flip. If Harris wins, they'll need to flip one more, and all eyes are on Montana and Ohio for their best opportunities to flip Senate seats there. And of course, I also have to shout out Nebraska again, where there's a particularly close Senate race between a Republican and an independent. No Democrat running there.
Interesting. All right, 538's Galen Druke. And Galen, we can't let you leave without wishing you a happy birthday. The irony of how long we've been talking about this election, and I did not know Election Day is your birthday, friend.
It is truly wild, Diane, the way that the stars have aligned on November 5th. When the candidates say it's the most important day in history, I truly, truly agree.
They're talking about you, of course.
Of course.
Galen, thank you, friend. Happy birthday.
Thank you.